Okay, so welcome everybody, and so grateful to have you join us today for Business Resilience Now. We have been doing a series since about the middle of March, when at least COVID-19 really sort of entered our consciousness here in Canada in full force. And I personally live in the province of Alberta. And at that point, March 15th, we had the beginnings of our lockdown. And of course, a lot of the work I do is with business owners and individuals who are entrepreneurs. And of course, they have had a very difficult time, many of them through COVID-19. And of course, the government response through the lockdown. Not all of them, but many. And so we've been bringing together some incredible guests, each week, where we've been talking about business resilience. The fact is, obviously, COVID-19 has changed our world. And some of that is probably good, some of that maybe not so good, and some of that is sort of neutral. But a lot of people have been throwing this idea around that we're all in the same boat, and the truth is that's not true. I think that we're all in the same storm, but for sure every one of us is in a different boat. And the truth of the matter when it comes to being in a different boat is that sometimes the boat you have no control over, but other times you have some influence over the boat. And for those of you who are business owners, those of you who are entrepreneurs, you know a lot about building the boat. You know a lot about flying the plane and building the plane literally while you're flying it. And so, many of you who have tuned in, you're entrepreneurs, you're leaders, you're executives, and the idea has been, let's learn how to build a new boat together, because you can't really control the storm, but you can have some influence over the boat. And I'm a big believer, huge believer, that the answer is never in one person. I think that the solution is always about conversations. It's always about interacting and getting to know different perspectives. And so really, really excited today that we have I consider a good friend of mine, Riza Santos, on the webinar. As you know, Riza, she has a long bio. I'm not going to have time to read all of it. There's a lot more than is on the screen. But of course, Riza, has been a person who I've known for over a decade. And one of the things that has impressed me about Riza on so many levels is her ability to continually pivot and to continually be resilient. In other words, she is a Miss Universe Canada, Miss World Canada title holder. I mean, she's done sort of what I'll broadly call celebrity, at the highest levels. She's currently a recording artist and still does, my understanding, a lot of modeling and has lots of requests all over the world. But she is also a singer, a songwriter, and a classically trained mezzo-soprano. And she also is working on releasing an EP later this year. But beyond that, Riza is educationally trained as an engineer, and she's also been in the military. And so that's kind of amazing. And on top of that, has done a lot of work, a lot of charity work. I mean, for example, working with the Canadian International Development Agency in the Philippines. And on top of that, she is a business diva, really has a great mind for business, a great mind for entrepreneurship, and does management consulting right now. She's working on some software projects and, really supporting business development in multiple industries. And so, Riza, we're really grateful that you're here taking some time with us today. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah. And how are you doing today, by the way?
I'm good. It's sunny out today, so I'm excited to get some vitamin D. How are you doing?
Yes. I'm doing good. We were chatting before the sort of we went live that I need some vitamin D. I mean, you don't find many people out there more white than me, and I can't seem to hold a tan for long. But we haven't had a lot of sun, so like you're saying. Riza and I live in the same city. It's nice to have a little bit of sun today, right?
Yes, it's really a treat when we do get the sun.
Absolutely. So, how's COVID been treating you? What have you been up to through this journey here?
I've been at home. This is the longest that I've been in one place, and especially in one city in the past 5 years, because usually I'm flying between Canada, usually the US. So I'm going to Los Angeles quite often,
Yeah.
and then Asia every once in a while. But I've had my feet planted on the ground for some time now, like everyone else.
Oh yeah, and I mean you do a lot of travel as part of your career, eh? And
Yes.
so have you kept count? I wonder of how many countries you've been to, for example, things like that.
Um, Not entirely.
Yeah.
I do have a little idea. The thing is, I travel so extensively, but I'm constantly traveling to the same destinations.
Yes.
So I actually haven't been to too many places, but
Yeah.
I'm always flying, but some of the same cities. I'd like
Yeah.
to explore more though.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too. I've been lucky to travel lots in my career and in the work that I've done, and I've probably I have been to at least 20 countries for sure.
Oh.
Last count I think it was 26, but I feel like I've had an opportunity to frequent a couple of places due to business, and I think that's
Mhm.
probably the same for you. I mean, you've been
Yes.
in LA quite a bit, right? And
Yeah,
lived
or
there for
even
quite a
parts of the
while, huh?
states. Yeah,
Yeah.
parts of the states that I probably wouldn't have even thought of going to unless business brought me there.
Yeah.
Um, it's been really nice though. It's been a treat. So
Yeah.
it is a privilege and a blessing to travel.
Isn't that the truth, eh? So, I mean, we're looking at your bio. I mean, you'd have to be kind of not reading it to realize just how resilient you've been and the fact that you've been able to pivot and move sort of from, even one industry to the next, one almost career to the next. So, would you mind just telling us a little bit about your business journey? I mean, we can read the sort of the headlines, but just, from on a personal level, just kind of talk us through, what it's been like for you and sort of what it's looked like.
Honestly, I don't really know where to start.
Mm.
Initially, I joined the Canadian Forces Army Reserve right out of high school. I was actually going to Bible school at the time. And my brother had kind of mentioned it to me. I was very inspired by my grandparents during the Second World War with all the work that they did. My grandmother was awarded honorary corporal by the Philippine government
Wow.
because they did so much to help people. And so when I realized that I could join the Canadian Forces Army Reserve, I was like, I'm going to go right away. And so I actually recruited my brother and I recruited my best friend, and I was doing that for a few years. And then I kind of landed in entertainment on a visit to the Philippines. And I did that. But my family has such a strong academic background that I'm always drawn back, and I'm very close to my family, so that's why I actually ended up working in parallel through entertainment, and then also I've done internships at my dad's company, and then worked with my brother, he's sitting right beside me. My parents are both engineers, and both of my siblings are engineers. And so naturally, I just kind of gravitate to that industry, different facets of that industry. And then, of course, I'm really close to my family. And so my brother's an entrepreneur, and so I work pretty extensively with him. He's shy, so he's off camera, but he's sitting right here.
Yeah, we have a number of things going on simultaneously.
Yeah, we've got a few things going on right now. So that's how I've been able to pivot. See, the thing is, I've always had the support of my family.
Okay.
And so that has been such, I don't really know what I would do without them.
Yeah, and I've been with your brother Josh in a couple of nightclubs in Manila. He's not that shy, to be really honest, but
Thank you, shy. It depends what time of day.
That's right. Different context, right? But, so tell me, I mean, I do want to talk about what you guys are up to in business right now, because I think it's actually really cool. But one thing I have noticed about you, and just to be really clear with the audience, I mean, I've known Riza for a long time, and I've always been impressed at how important family and faith is to you. And to me, those would be things that I would say, through the highs and lows of your career, through the ups and the downs, probably personally, I've always seen you lean on those two things. And so why don't you just tell us a little bit about that for you, what that's looked like for you?
Yeah, definitely. So faith is so fundamental to my life. I grew up in a Christian home, but of course, I didn't really grasp until I got right into actually reading the Bible and Romans 10:17, that faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word of God. And so that is just profoundly impacted my life, and I can't separate myself from that. But of course, my family, they have such a strong faith foundation as well, where my mom, and that's actually how my parents met. They met at church when they were young, I think 7 and 8 years old. And then they met again after my dad, he went to do engineering at the University of Manitoba.
Okay.
And then he went back to the Philippines and went to church, saw my mom playing piano, and I guess they had a whirlwind courtship, and they ended up getting married, I think in a matter of like less than 2 weeks, a week or so. And so I love that love story. I think it's so inspirational. They've been married for over 40 years.
Yeah.
And so it's just been such the fabric of our family. And that's, such a strong support system. I've traveled a lot on my own. Mm-hmm. And so when I feel lonely, I always have God there. And faith is really foundational. I pray a lot too. So
yeah, absolutely. And you have a smart family, right? Like, holy cow, it's like the brain power, that's really awesome, but yet hardworking, right? It's not like, all of you do, engineers as siblings, engineers as parents. I mean, it's not like, they just woke up smart. I mean, you guys, know how to work and how to grind, eh?
Yeah, my parents, they're very hardworking. My mom was a graduate of UP engineering. She did chemical engineering. And both of my siblings are really smart. My brother, actually, I gotta say, he is at the genius level. He said, I don't know about that, but definitely really hardworking. They're my inspiration. I'm so fortunate to have role models in my family. It's so funny because Father's Day is coming up on Sunday. And I was talking to my mom the other day, and so on Mother's Day, it was Mother's Day and Father's Day. And then on Father's Day, it's going to be Father's Day and Mother's Day, because we can't separate them. They're always together, and we have to celebrate them both. I feel like one is getting left out. So that's kind of like how we are on family vacations. My parents, growing up, they would not go without us. They always took us along. And so even now, my parents will always give me a call, see what's going on. It's just, we're all really close.
Yeah, that's so great. So you guys, you and Josh, and I know, a couple of others, you've been working on some newish ventures. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what's happening for you guys right now in sort of business?
Yeah, so I'm focusing more on the social media side, just because, as you mentioned, like I have a lot of experience in the entertainment industry. And in pageantry as well, modeling. I've done movies, I'm working on music now. And so that's led me to have a social media platform, which I didn't actually utilize that much. Only in the past month have I really been looking at analytics, in the past month or two, since since the pandemic, actually. I never really bothered to look at analytics, but actually once I started looking into it, my goodness, the power of influencers in social media, which unfortunately I kind of neglected. For a number of years, I mean, I would, when it would come to posting on my social media platform, would post maybe once a month, which is like really bad if you consider yourself an influencer, which I never did, because I always like, oh, I need to have like a message, or I'm like, I don't want to do any, like, I'm like, I'm like all about authenticity. If I'm like, I don't like to say things for the sake of saying something.
Yes.
But I'm like, you know what? I do have a lot to share. And there is a lot of power behind the social media influencers. Their business is built on social media influencing. And the reach is, it is crazy. Some of the analytics when I look at it.
So like one of the things that you can say for sure, so one of the things you can say for sure is like, when you're an entrepreneur and you want to start up a new business, like not everything is going to work. Actually, probably most things are going to fail. And a lot of the times, if you want to say like what the most important ingredient is in entrepreneurship is sales. Like really, you have to drive sales if you want to start any kind of business. You have to get that revenue going. That's your lifeblood. So that you can, and then, so just by the nature of the people that we work with, we have a lot of people around us that always come up with new ideas, new things, and we try it here and there. And we know that things are going to be hits, but we don't know why we really struggle with it. And we realize that the gap is in the sales funnel. So over the period of like right before COVID-19 happened, we realized that the landscape of marketing was changing dramatically. And everyone and their mom was saying like, oh, I do digital marketing. And I took a lot of advice from them.
Yeah,
took a lot of advice.
There's a lot of people that say they know digital marketing, but once I actually got into it, looking at analytics, I'm like,
we're like, yeah, this is,
they're really know digital marketing.
They're willing to take like a lot of money, and they were willing to like, offer a lot of advice that didn't really work, and you pay them for their time. They don't really take on any risk, and you're kind of left holding the bag. Yeah. So one of the things, by virtue of the fact that by virtue of necessity, we had to learn digital marketing, and the way that things are changing, like, we're subject to like the whims of the tech companies and how they change their algorithms. Yeah. And you need to know like what things work and what things don't work, and you have to be able to tweak your formula so that you can get seen. Yeah. So that you can drive sales. Yeah. And so like during COVID-19, like we had a few businesses that started making some money, and then we realized, we're actually starting to get some traction on a lot of things that we're doing. And then we realized we kind of stumbled into a formula for digital marketing. We had several channels that you can go to, and there are several methods that you can use in order to get seen, in order to get your product out there. And so like we realized like, we can roll this into another line of business.
That's great.
So that's something that we're working on right now, because we have like we can actually show metrics on like what we've been able to generate in the last 3 months, because everyone that I was talking to in my circle was like, oh yeah, all you got to do is this, and this, and that didn't work.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people think, well, I don't want to generalize too much, but I do know a few people that say they're digital marketers, but they don't actually know the landscape of it. They don't know the back end and how much really goes into it. Yeah, and so that's kind of what pushed me into it, and it intrigued me, where I'm looking at all these metrics, I see the analytics, and people are always talking about the algorithm is changing, or we're always subject as influencers to the algorithms on social media, on Instagram, which is such a powerful tool. And so that's kind of why I started navigating it and looking into it, and I'm like, oh wow.
Yeah, we started tweaking our formula, especially with the way that she does social media. She's been we've been working on a formula to try to get, seen.
Yeah, working with other influencers, just a lot of different things.
How do we who are the people that we reach out to? What are the channels to market?
Mm-hmm. So are you gonna show us your lovely face, Josh? There.
I'm okay.
Squeeze in there beside.
I'm just a talking head. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about when you think about social media and digital marketing, what are a couple of quick tips you can share for people who might be listening and they may not have a massive budget or sort of
be frugal.
Celebrity status.
Be frugal. Be frugal. Like you can waste so much money just like on so many different channels, and you won't get anything out of it. You won't get any conversions. Mm-hmm. You have to find like the quickest path to conversion, and once you freaking hit that path, bang on that drum like hard. So
yeah, honestly, I have spent a lot of money just I don't know.
But experimenting. We spend so much money experimenting, trying different things, wasting so much time.
Wasting a lot of time, a lot of money, and trusting people.
You know, when they were telling us that this is what, and it makes sense when you listen to people talk about it, like, oh man, that just makes total sense to you. And then you try it, and you like, $400 or $500 later, you're like, oh crap, that didn't get me a single sale.
So what are some things that have worked for you guys in terms of your social media?
Well, we're going to be rolling this all into a deck.
People are saying we're hearing a voice on the side.
Oh yeah.
So it's my brother.
Yeah, it's me. We're going to be rolling this into a deck here, and
my voice is not that deep.
I think like it's really more like creativity, because there's
creativity.
It's
don't spend too much money on other people.
You got to be creativity.
Like you really need to allot your resources
really well. Like one of the things you can say for sure is that the most valuable commodity on planet Earth right now is attention. And if you can figure out a way to get people's attention in a creative way, and then you can first thing you need to figure out is how do you get in front of their face? B, how do you get them to actually look at you? And then C is how do you get them to convert? If you can figure out those 3 things in a row, then you've got like your path to market, which is like a really hard thing to figure out, especially with everything changing so quickly. Because like, especially with like Google, everyone says they do SEO, and then all of a sudden Google rolls out a search algorithm update, and then everybody gets shuffled.
Yeah.
So
it's like when they have the algorithm updates, even within the influencer circles, they get all frazzled, and then they're looking at their insights, and they're like, guys, the people that I talk to,
or like they start banning like different things that influencers do to get more attention. Like they get like action blocked and stuff, and like just
people get action blocked because they're always trying to raise their engagement, but they don't really know what's working. So a lot of it is trial and error. But we're always subject to the
platform.
Yeah.
Like
Instagram.
And then so like at the end of the day right now, it's just a matter of figuring out a formula that works, and it's mostly knowing what doesn't work. Like if I can say anything, it's like I can tell you a lot of things that don't work. And a lot of the times you'll get a lot of advice from people, and they'll give you a formula that they know, and then like it was maybe worked like 2 years ago, but it doesn't work anymore.
Right.
So it's
it's always changing.
So it's changing constantly.
And the space is so saturated. So people are trying to get more creative. But the thing with like from my end is I know that I have an audience. I just wasn't really sure because I post a lot of pictures, but I'm like I didn't really, and that is another reason why I didn't really post that much is like I don't really have a message behind this. They're all like pictures from my modeling portfolio, but I'm like, I spent a lot of time thinking about it. I'm like, how do I want to utilize this? And so because I work with my brother, because I work with my family, I can see the back end. I'm like, there's a lot of value to this. I'm like, how can I convert it to sales, or how can I monetize this? Because there's a lot of influencers as well that are selling products. I'm like, I can never get behind anything that I don't believe in. I'm like, but what is the purpose behind all this? I don't want to be, I'm like, why do I have this platform? What am I going to use it for? And so I always like to look at the purpose as well. I just don't like doing things for the sake of doing things.
Yeah, you got to make sure, like, especially like if you're talking to somebody and then they smell like the used car salesman thing, like when you're just not authentic, you're like slapping the top of the head, and you're like, this thing's not going to break down in 3 weeks. People can see right through that. Like you have to have a level of authenticity when you're trying to drive sales with people. Like you have to like genuinely believe in your product as well. Like there's all of these little factors. Like, does it fit with your brand? Does it fit with your image?
Yeah.
How well are you telling your story? How well are you getting people to buy into your story?
Yeah.
Like it's there's so many factors that go into it. Like the key thing is like creativity.
Right. So then tell me, maybe Riza, like as you have been in this process of pivoting, like what have some of the biggest challenges been for you? What would you say maybe the hardest thing has been in your sort of business journey and evolution?
Mm-hmm. So for me, it's a lot of it because I do so many different things. Sometimes I overthink things as well. And so that's where I'm like, well, what's the purpose of this? And a lot of people tell me this is I have to just go and do it. So I find that my problem is, and I'm a perfectionist as well. It's like, I don't want to say anything. I don't want to do anything until I think that it's perfect, but it's not always ever going to be completely perfect. I have recognized that I had this fear of failure where I'm like, oh, I'm not really sure. I don't know if there's 100% chance of success. So I don't really want to do it. But you can't, at least for me, I'm like, you can't live that way. So that has been my greatest challenge, is just getting over myself and my ego, and just not being afraid to put myself out there, which is why, you know, I hold back a lot of the time. But I think with my own fear, I probably held myself back from a lot of opportunities as well. And so I think, you know, you just have to go out there and do it. And so because I'm working on so many different things in parallel, you know, it has just been to just keep going.
Do you think that a lot of people get held back by sort of the fear of not being perfect, and the fear of, like, you know, it's sort of like, I've got this concept, I've got this dream, this business idea, and yet it's not perfect. I don't have all the money I think I need. I don't have all the marketing support I think I need. What do you know, and so I'm just not gonna do anything until it gets sort of perfect. Have you noticed that with folks in the past?
Definitely. I think so. There's a lot, everything that holds people back a lot of the time, I think, is fear-based. And so of, you know, what people will think, fear of failure, just fear, lacking confidence that they don't maybe necessarily have the resources or have what it takes. But one thing, I was listening to a sermon by Adrian Rogers, and he said something that really stuck with me. He said, you can't steer a ship that isn't moving. Yeah. And so I'm like, you know, I have to just keep going. You know, whatever I have. And then also prioritizing for me is because I'm like, oh, I have this idea, and there's this, and then somebody approached me about this, and I'm like, okay, I have to prioritize and focus on things, and I can't be afraid of what people think either. Which I was for, you know, maybe a lot of years. I'm like, oh, what if people are even initially competing for Miss Universe Canada, because I'd already won Miss World Canada. I'm like, oh, I can't lose. What if I lose? I'm like, that'll be so embarrassing. But you know, I'm like, no, I just have to do everything within my power to know that I did the best that I could. And I thank God, you know, I had a positive result and I won. But you can't be afraid. And then that's what has held me back from many opportunities.
Also, on top of that, like, you know, there's this quote that I love that's from Stanley Kunitz: the poem in the head is always perfect. Resistance begins when you try to convert it into language. Like, you know, a lot of people have like the perfect model in their head, or this perfect idea, and then they actually go out to do it, and then they realize, like, oh, there goes like $4,000 or $5,000, and I don't like no return on the investment. But like, that's the first step in figuring out your model, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, I think I've seen this with people so many times where it's like, I need it to be perfect first, right? And yet, when you guys think about any of the ventures that you've done, or even you know, Riza, starting your career way back then, I mean, was it ever perfect from the moment you began, you know?
No, and that's actually one of the biggest shortcomings, I think, is with especially the music. So a lot of people don't know that I'm a vocalist. And a few people know. I'm not known for that though, but that's probably like my strongest trait or talent. But I'm like, I'm so like, oh, these songs aren't perfect. I probably have like, oh my gosh, like 50 songs or more, and nobody's ever heard them.
Yeah, we literally sit there and we write, and we just
like,
improvise.
this isn't good enough. No, I don't want to put it out there. It's not good enough. But then I'm like, I look at YouTube and I'm like, oh my gosh, my stuff is so much better than this. That's another thing. There's a lot of people that have careers based off of YouTube alone. And I'm like, you know, the time that I've wasted just not putting out any content. I'm like, my stuff is better than a lot of this, but I'm like, you know, holding myself back because I'm like, nothing is ever good enough. Like, you know, it's just like, that's just not the way to live life.
Love it.
That's not the way to be.
Yeah, you just gotta like take the feedback.
I was gonna say, I mean, I'm positive that whatever you guys do musically would be amazing. We should set up a karaoke night at my place and sort that out, because
Yeah.
there's no doubt about it. But it is amazing how, we second guess ourselves. I've often said, and I don't tell a lot of people this, but I have said this, quite a few times to people and it sounds kind of creepy, but sometimes I go and I sit in a cemetery, literally. I'll drive my car and sit in the parking lot and walk around, not because I know anyone who passed away, but because as I'm walking through there, I'm thinking about all the unsung songs, all the unwritten poems, all the unwritten books, all the unstarted businesses, like all of these dreams and ideas that people took to the grave with them. And, I was a pastor for 13 years and sat beside the deathbed people many times, and no one ever said, wow, I'm so happy that I let fear rule my life. People were like, they were like, man, I had this dream. I wanted to start a business. I never did. I wanted to stand on a stage and sing, and I never did. And to me, what a tragedy, that we would live that way. So we've got Dr. Elton C. Tan. He met with us from the Makati Tourism Foundation. He's joining us. So,
Hi, Dr. Tan.
And Secretary General Tanyu III. So that's great. And can we get Josh and Riza to commit to a karaoke night? What do you think? Is that
at some point for sure, definitely?
Josh's good singer too.
But I was just gonna say, like, one of the things that you're talking about with regards to that's one of the most ancient ideas. Like, if you can say, like, one of the very core ideas in Western thought is that is like the Platonic tradition, the Aristotelian tradition that eventually developed into the Hellenistic philosophies, and one of them, which was probably the most influential, was like the Stoic philosophy. Right. And one of the things that they loved to talk about
what's that philosophy?
was a memento mori, like remember that you are mortal.
Yes.
Right? Yes, we're mortal. We only have so much time.
Like, one of my favorite quotes that I love from the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius is, "If thou workest hard at which is before thee, following right reason, seriously, vigorously, calmly, without allowing anything else to distract thee, thou holdest to this, expecting nothing, fearing nothing, but satisfied with thy present activity, and with heroic truth in every word, you will live happily, and there's no one that can prevent this."
It's great. So tell me this then, actually a question came up in the chat window here. Are you currently selling products or services right now?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to be rolling it into a deck for sure to make sure that people know what they're getting themselves into.
Yeah, we have a couple of clients.
We have we took on, since we decided to go in the digital marketing route, and then we took on 4 clients, and we definitely want to make sure that we provide value. And so we're rolling this into a deck to make sure that people know kind of like what we've done and what our success stories will look like, and what they can kind of expect, so that it's more realistic.
So it's digital marketing is what we offer.
Yeah. So
from my end, I specialize on the social media side.
Yeah, and then from me and my end, it's the rest of it. So it's like there's the SEM, SEO, sites, like how you can get conversions, the creativity side. Like, it's a lot of there's a lot
that goes into it. It's
more than you would realize. Like, there's a lot of people that say they do those kinds of services.
Like the search engine optimization, they're like, I know how to do SEO. There are a lot of people that think they know how to do SEO, but they don't. But really.
There's a lot of types that you should kind of expect to see.
So what kind of time frame can we give people to expect sort of your sort of deck to be ready and your business ready to kind of take on clients? What are you thinking? 2 months, 3 months, a year? What are your thoughts?
Probably because right now I'm still I've got a pretty good formula, but I think it can be better. Okay. Because right now I'm 6 to 7 months into the process of tweaking it. So once I'm finalized on that formula and I'm confident that it works, then I'll roll that into the deck, and then I'm going to get that to all the people that I work with. Because right now we have a sales funnel, and our sales funnels 3 other marketing firms that we kind of we do shadow marketing for. And so once I get those decks to them and we're happy with it, we'll definitely get it out there.
That's great.
So it'll be in the short term.
It'll be in the short term for sure.
Yeah, and then in terms of social media, I already have that ready on my end. I've been talking to a few clients, but I actually that want to use me as the endorser for it, because just looking at some of my analytics, but I'm holding back on a lot of that stuff right now.
Yeah,
that's great.
Because the key thing is we don't want to be selling services when we're not like, when we're just taking people's money. You want to make sure that you actually can show conversions.
I have 100% confidence in what I have right now. It's just, I'm just trying to delay it because I want everything to work.
We want everything to work together because like
the thing,
you gotta go like full tilt on freaking social media. If you're like, you gotta go full tilt on marketing. If you do a campaign,
totally, that's so good.
Like, has to be like continuous.
Yeah,
it's so true. I mean, that's the biggest thing I've learned over the years is just consistency. And you can't take on a landscape like social media, especially with all of the massive amount of stuff that's out there, without being consistent, right? So what are some of the habits and routines that you have going on, Riza, to keep yourself physically healthy, mentally healthy, spiritually healthy? Let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, so physically, I have a balanced diet. I'm actually, I fell off the fitness train a little bit just because of the pandemic and constantly being at home. I'm used to going to the gym, but I am seeing a personal trainer tomorrow just to get things back on track. I have goals. So one of the biggest things for me is like goal setting. And then it's because if I don't have something I'm working towards, then I feel like I'm floundering. It makes me, I don't have anxiety, but it makes me feel like I have anxiety. If I don't write down my goals, what I want to accomplish, some sort of time frame. And so at least I can keep myself accountable and stay on track. So healthy diet. Thank God the gym is opening soon. Actually, some of the gyms are open right now, but mine is opening next week. So I'm going to be doing that again, and I'm so excited. And then spiritually, I have this app called One Place. This is not an ad at all. I love this app because I listen to my favorite sermons, pastors, Adrian Rogers, Focus on the Family, Family Talk, Dr. David Jeremiah, Turning Point. So every day when I wake up in the morning, that's what I put on. This is how I like to start my day, is with the Word of God, the sword of the Spirit. And that's, I'm doing my makeup, I'm getting ready, and I'm listening. And that's how I like to start my day. It's just, it sets everything.
Like one of the things that you probably struggle with when you work for yourself, or like, especially now during this COVID thing, since everyone's technically working from home, is structure. Like you're not getting up, you're not getting ready, and then you kind of just feel yourself wasting away. And then we know that that's kind of a recipe for psychosis sometimes. Like you can easily just fall into the pit of like not having any structure, not working towards anything, and just kind of letting the days become long, but the weeks become short.
Yeah, I mean, actually initially I was like, in March, I'm like, I felt so sad, and I'm like, what's going on? And then I was constantly listening to the news, and then I was letting everything get to me, and like so much negativity, and I'm like, you know what? No, I need to turn this off for a second. I need to reset. So I'm like, I can't get in. I'm sleeping at like 3 a.m. and then like waking up late. I'm like, what's going on? This is not like
having structure, having things like an actual daily goals and weekly goals that you're setting, because like we're aiming creatures, right? Like we work towards things. Like that's part of our nature. So you have to make sure like knowing that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a verse that I really like in the Bible, where there is no vision, the people perish. And so I'm like, you have to, at least for me, have a vision of where I want to be, some sort of timeline, and work towards a goal.
And like setting up a schedule for yourself, like getting up in the morning and making sure you still have some kind of a structure or some semblance of structure in your life, so you don't just kind of wither.
You can't let the lack of structure that society has created and now is gone because of the lockdown. So a lot of folks are letting their mental health and their physical health fall through the cracks, right? I'm not a big fan of the lockdown. I've been pretty public about it. I think in a lot of ways, and I don't want to get political. It shouldn't be political, but it's kind of like let's have an extreme overreaction. It almost feels like somebody's science fair project. And my big concern is that we're actually doing all of that and hurt our economy, and everybody's walking around in fear out there. And we're still not actually helping the most vulnerable. When I actually think how awful it is, people in long-term care facilities, senior citizens, we haven't protected them, we haven't taken care of them, and yet we're insisting that all of these other people do all of this social distancing, And that's not saving anybody's lives. And now the research is starting to come out. I think 6 months from now, people are going to look back on this and they're going to think, this was one of the biggest overreactions and that's not to say it's not serious, but you can overreact to something that is still serious. And, I say that to say, how have you preserved and maintained your mental health through this? Because it is tough, right? To go from being very social and having the opportunity to travel and do business and interact with people, have conversations, have coffee, have a lunch. And then, all of a sudden, it's home. And at first they were saying, stay home, save lives. Like the most ridiculous, stupid thing I've ever heard in my life, right? Like stay home, save lives. But, people got into this and now some folks will never come out. I was talking to one very intelligent lady last week, but absolutely trapped in fear, a lady in her 40s. And she's like, I'm never leaving my house until they develop a vaccine. And I just couldn't believe that I was talking to someone who was this intelligent and yet was so trapped in fear, appreciating 97% of the deaths have happened for people who are 60 and over. And the tragedy is we haven't actually protected those folks, right? I could totally understand if they weren't dying, because the lockdown maybe saved them, but actually they're still dying in spite of the fact that we locked everything down. And so it really didn't solve the problem. So how have you protected kind of your own mental health through this?
Well, one thing we can say for sure definitely is that hindsight is 2020. Like hindsight is 2020. We can look back on this and really reflect. But at the beginning of this, when we were like originally getting the numbers, everybody was in panic. There was a time for panic. That time has since passed. I would agree with you. And like now it's the time for cooler heads to prevail. That being said, like it's definitely not like I don't think either of us are forming policy, so it's not really like in our purview right now to say like what should or shouldn't be done. But that being said, like we can take care of ourselves.
Yeah. So, on that note, as for myself, actually, I came from the Philippines in March, and then I had a quick stopover in Korea. And at the time, there were a lot of cases in Korea at the time. And so, and I was actually not that nervous because I wasn't hearing a lot of news at the time until I got back here, and then the news started pouring in, and then that's what made me feel, a little bit scared and anxious. And then, people were scared of me because I just came from Asia.
Yeah.
But then, and then I felt bad. I know I took it a little bit personal because I even called the is it 811, and I told them that I had just come from Asia, this because I flew back in time for my mom's birthday.
Nice.
In the first week of March, and so that's actually what rushed me to get back to Canada. Had I waited another week or two, I think I would have had a lot of difficulty getting back.
Yeah. Because
of all the canceled flights.
Yeah.
So it was a blessing in disguise that I'm back home with my family.
Yeah.
But for me, it was a lot of transition mentally to get used to this, where I had all these plans. I was going to go to the film festival in France. I already had plans for that. I was going to go to Italy. And then after that, I was going to go to the Philippines for meetings,
nice.
Potentially talk about a movie project.
Yeah.
And I had my recordings going on. And, that because of this, it has stunted a lot of my plans, where I'm like, I feel, kind of bad. I'm like, oh, I had all these plans. But then, of course, you have to look at it in perspective. I'm like, there's a lot of people that are negatively affected by this. I'm actually not suffering at all. I just have to reframe and then, make my plans again and just adjust.
Yeah. And I'm with you 100%. I mean, my bigger issue is the fear. One of the big challenges I find, because I'm a data guy, I have 2 master's degrees. One of them is an MBA in finance. And I just say that to say that I have been trained to look at the data. And, the tragedy is that a lot of the folks who have been so trapped in fear haven't actually looked at the data and said, well, where are the risks? Now, again, 3 months ago, we didn't have the data that we've got now. But I mean, today the data is, I mean, globally very, very extensive. And so what I've been trying to say to people is, you know, be safe, absolutely do what you're comfortable in doing, but make sure that you're not getting your health information from CNN.
Yeah.
You know, make sure you're not tuning into MSNBC or CBC. You know, we have a very capable public health officer here in Alberta, you know, Dr. Dina Henshaw. I think some of our public health officers in Canada have been amazing. And one of the things I love that, you know, Dina Henshaw has said is, you know, get out. You know, you need to get out of the house. You can't, you know, children need to play together. You need to be able to get some fresh air and yeah, maintain your distance and do the things that we're being asked to do. But this idea that somehow you know, this hiding behind our closed doors is going to keep us safe is so antithetical to the vast majority of actual research we have on mental health and physical health, that we actually need each other.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
Like, you know what?
And the research on that is without question, whereas the COVID stuff is still in development. And so, you know, it's almost like we've rejected this pool of data over here, which is around mental health and the fact that loneliness is more fatal than obesity or smoking, right?
Yeah.
According to the data. And we threw all that out and we said, we're going to fix this one thing called COVID without really appreciating, wait a second, there's a lot more to this. And I think it's a bit of a tragedy. So yeah, I'm with you. I just think that people should get their actual health information, not through the channels of the media, because I'm 100% sure that the media has an agenda that we're not entirely looped into. And I'd rather listen to Dr. Dina Henshaw than CNN any day of the week anyways.
Yeah, like we have to know the facts.
Like definitely when you read like news and you read kind of anything nowadays, especially in the age of social media, you have to be aware that there's an editorialized slant to it.
Yeah.
Like all the time. Like, and you have to have, you know, put your little critical thinking hat on and, you know, read things with a grain of salt, knowing that, like, you know, like a lot of, because of the internet, like a lot of the information that they are using to present their story is also available to you.
Yeah.
So right now there's like when you're forming public policy, it's really difficult to, you have to, like, you know, it's really difficult to say like what is the best solution and for all, to please all parties. But like again, it's
like a talking voice on the side.
Yeah, I know. It's like people are like, "Who's that arm?" There, they see your arm. Actually, Josh is a pretty good-looking guy. So there, he's got his mask on. Okay, all right. Well, it's a good thing you have your mask on in the house because Riza might be COVID positive. You know, maybe.
Yeah, you know, I wonder actually if some people have already gotten.
Love it.
Have gotten COVID and didn't realize it.
Yeah, well, this is part of the challenge. And, you know, I tell people, I think I might have gotten it. You know, I was in Asia in January. And when I came back, you know, I never really have jet lag. You know, I've traveled lots and lots. And I came back in probably 3 days. I didn't feel myself. And I think that definitely I'm in a good, strong place right now. But I think one of the things about it is, you know, 100% be safe, right? Do what's right for you. Do what's right for your family. Take a look at it and make a decision. You know, I guess my big thing is without being trapped by fear. You know, if you've looked at the data and you've listened to the health professionals in your province or your region, and you're making a decision based on that, great. But, you know, so many folks are, you know, just, you mentioned it actually a few minutes ago, you know, when we're hyper focused on the media, you know, it really doesn't help us make good decisions, unfortunately, because there is a little bit of editorial there. So, you know, so why don't we, I want to just kind of wrap up with a couple of thoughts. One is, you know, maybe we should come back here in a couple of weeks, you guys, and have a karaoke show. It sounds like people want to hear you guys do some singing. Josh is extremely talented musician as well, for sure. But, you know, so what are you most excited about, Riza, when you think about the future? You know, what are you looking most forward to when you think about, you know, the next 3 to 6 months in your life?
For the next 3 to 6 months is getting this project off the ground, and
Yeah.
we already see it's already in motion.
There's a lot of things already in motion. Like one of the things for sure is that like everything is restructuring. Everything is restructuring right now. So like
it's one thing I have to say, because everybody always, so in my journey, I don't know, for most people, my brother's like he's like my little brother, but he's like my best friend, but he's actually behind the scenes a lot of the time. Like even when
I know, I've seen him at work, but why does he have a mask on?
I'm COVID. I'm scared.
Are you? Yeah.
He's a comedian too.
So, sorry. But I mean, like one thing you can say for sure over the next couple of months is that there's going to be a lot of restructuring. Like a lot of the like just because consumer behavior is going to change. Like a lot of things are going to go digital. There's a huge opportunity right now if you can help people kind of manage the transition from like the old way of doing things into the new way of doing things, which is why I'm so excited for us to be working on this formula, because we're working like she also does management consulting, and so we're also looking at how do we do digital enterprise transformation. So how do we have people get on their ops to the cloud?
Yeah,
there's a lot of opportunity right now, because
there's so much opportunity right now in the digital space. Like now is such a crucial pivot point, especially
it's a watershed moment.
It is, it's a watershed moment right now.
Yeah.
And so I'm most excited to see everything materialize, because we've been working on this for quite a while. And it's not just this specific project, but everything, like even in my career in the past, everything's kind of converging together, where I can take all these assets that I have and then move them and have them all work together. Because before I'd be like, oh, well, what's this for? What's this for? How can I, have this all working together? But you can, in the digital space, you can take all of that and then have it all working together.
Because
that's what I'm most excited for in the next 3 to 6 months. Seeing everything materialize. Everything we've been working on my end, on his end. My brother is, he's a geomatic engineer, but he does a lot of programming.
Yeah.
So
we work together on a lot of stuff.
Skill of his.
I love it. So tell me, when you think about this convergence and the idea that, we're still going to need to be sort of 100% media responsive and 100% sort of digitally optimized. And really, I like what you said earlier about being authentic, So for, as we close, what's a couple of thoughts about folks in terms of how they could do social media a little bit better if they're thinking about that right now?
Well, I mean, if you're going to be like, one thing that the biggest lesson that we learned over the last couple of weeks was definitely have some level of brand consistency. Like, because like a brand is like a person. Like you have to trust the person or the brand.
Yeah.
You have to be like, if you do something extremely weird, like if I were to like come on to the show and like take off my shirt and dance, like
some people like that. There are people that do that. There's something for everyone, because it's such a big space.
It is.
And then for me, even for myself, I've struggled with that a little bit of like what my branding is. I know what it is, but because I work in so many different facets, I'm like, I don't want to stray away too much from my brand. I was looking at my social media platform now, where I want to move on to start promoting music also. And I'm like, how do I kind of make that seamless transition?
It's about telling a really good story.
And so, a lot of it is storytelling. Again, it's still authentic because it's still me, but at the same time, I have to look at it from like a brand perspective. And
how does this fit with the story?
Yeah, and if I do want to market it and monetize it, I'm like, I saw a question here. If I do monetize my singing, I don't yet. I haven't released anything professionally yet. So I just kind of sing. I sing at church. That's how I started singing. And then, I sing at functions every once in a while, and I sing in the studio when no one can hear me. And so, that's been a lot of it is just, I think figuring out your brand is number one. And you just do it because, social media, I think when I look at it, sometimes it seems so overwhelming. But just the consistency, figuring out your brand. What is your message? Who am I? What am I about? Or what is my product? What is it about? Who am I targeting? And then just kind of go from there. And there's so many resources now. If you want to make things really creative, you just need to figure out, what your objective is.
It's not just that, like also like understanding what people are like to some degree. Like what I'm trying to get at here is like one of my favorite quotes is from Plato, and he said, "Those who tell the stories rule society." And when you're engaged in something, and you're telling your own story to yourself, like, and you're constantly getting messages all the time. Like when you get an advertisement, like a lot of the times the ones that are really compelling tell you a really solid, really good story in like 4 or 5 words, or like even a picture.
Yeah, but I mean, you could tell a story in a picture.
It's
like images, they're so powerful.
Yeah, like it's if I could say like anything about that, it's just tell a really good story.
Right.
Oh, I see. And favorite app for managing social media platforms. I don't know. I'm still I'm kind of figuring that out right now. I don't have anyone running my social media. I do it myself.
Yeah.
So I don't have anything specifically for that, but a lot of it has been I've been looking at different content that I put out, and then just seeing what kind of feedback I get. And then from there, that's how I've been managing it. I'm sure there's probably a better way to manage it.
Right.
But I'm only getting back into it. I honestly, I never really paid attention to social media. I know it's powerful, but I'm like, now I look at it closely, I'm like, it is a really powerful.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think it's like you said, the fact of, being an influencer, right? I mean, and I think that is a wonderful business opportunity, but I think it comes with a lot of sort of responsibility too, right? How do you use that influence, and sort of to what end? Of course, a part of that is making money, but beyond that, so I guess on that note, just one sort of final question, because want to respect your time, using your influence, what would be the thing that you really want the audience here today to really hear and feel from you? What's the big message that you'd love them to hear?
Yeah. So, I mean, I was thinking about this for a while, and this is why I haven't been so active on social media. But the message that that I want to get out there is just to not be afraid. For me, this is almost me talking to myself, to not be afraid of failure, and to keep moving. And as you keep going, you are going to, find your strengths and learn more about yourself. And that has at least been my journey. And so if anything, like, do not be afraid. Don't be afraid of what other people think. Don't be afraid of like your own perceived limitations, because you are a lot stronger than you realize.
Like one thing that I find kind of funny is that like in Asian culture, we tend to be very risk averse. So like there's not like a lot of us in Hollywood, because like we won't be, we like the ones that they do pull into those movies are like accountants and stuff.
I almost didn't go for Miss Universe Canada because I'm like, oh, I don't want to lose.
You take we don't like dishonor very much. We're not very like, we're very risk averse people, and I think that's maybe
but it's not the end of the world, even if I did.
But like it's like, but when you have like that grit, and you've been through a lot of BS, like you go through a time like COVID, and you're like, you might be broke, but you're not scared, because you got that hustle, like we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Yeah. I love it. What do I want in my life? You just have to keep going. If you want it, you have to go.
That's right. So, and then one quick question here, is what's your favorite social media management tool, or do you use one?
Yeah. So I was looking at that question. I don't have a management tool, and it's not very efficient because I do everything myself. But at the same time, I'm trying to learn, what works, because on the back end, I'm not sure if this works for all accounts, but I just look at analytics and just seeing the type of engagement that I get, where it's coming from, the demographics. I don't have a tool or an app to manage it.
Yeah.
I've been doing everything really manually.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure there's a better way, but I'm very hands-on with it right now.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's really good. Well, thank you so much, Riza. What a great chat today. And thanks, Josh, for sneaking in there, my friend, and, keeping your mask on. I'm glad, because I was concerned about, seeing your face, even though your face it's a beautiful face for sure. Absolutely. So, just really want to thank you. I think one of the things you've heard loud and clear is, in the midst of chaos, there is opportunity. There's no doubt about that. And without a doubt, that kind of opportunity is really what we've been exploring here today. Please do follow Riza. You can, quite easily find her on Facebook under Riza Santos, her Facebook page. And then her Instagram is right there as well, Riza.official. So, please stay in touch and make sure that you engage, because that's what it's all about. And, honestly, we are really excited. Not only did we have Riza this week, but, a couple of weeks from now, we have not a couple of weeks, actually, next week, we have a powerhouse who's going to be joining us. Her name is Munfiq Abu. Munfiq is actually a life coach, but she calls herself, and I love this, a mindset reset self-leadership coach. And I just love that mindset reset. And Munfiq has quite an amazing story. So make sure you join us next week on Thursday, 11:45, a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And again, Riza, thank you so much. And if you're in a place, folks, where you're wondering about your next steps and what you really need to be doing, please do reach out. We'd love to book a support call with you. Lots and lots of folks have done that, and it's been very helpful to them. And so make sure you tune in, and we'll see you all next week. And thanks again, Riza. This has been great.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care, everybody.
Take care. Bye.